Agnes wasn't just any HOA member. She was the HOA, at least that's how she saw herself. With her signature fluorescent pink visor, clipboard, and an ever-present latte in hand, Agnes patrolled the neighborhood like a hawk searching for prey. Her mission, to protect the sanctity of the community, even if it meant enforcing rules that didn't exist. The community newsletter, which she personally edited and distributed, was filled with passive-aggressive reminders, like, "Residents are kindly reminded that blue trash bins clash with our neighborhood aesthetic. Please use green bins only." Agnes considered it her solemn duty to uphold standards, no matter how petty. Enter Ethan, a young, easygoing homeowner who had recently moved into the neighborhood. Ethan was everything Agnes despised: casual, unbothered, and worst of all, non-compliant with her arbitrary rules. Ethan's mailbox was a modern black design, which Agnes declared was an affront to the neighborhood's charm. She wasted no time in introducing herself, clipboard in hand, to let him know the mailbox would have to be replaced. "Welcome to the community," Agnes chirped with a thin smile. "I noticed your mailbox doesn't align with HOA guidelines." "Guidelines?" Ethan asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," Agnes replied, her smile tightening. "It's a little too bold. We prefer something more traditional, like white with decorative posts." Ethan chuckled. "I'll think about it," he said, knowing full well he wouldn't. Agnes's crusade wasn't limited to mailboxes. The HOA rules she enforced were absurdly specific. Grass had to be cut to precisely 2.5 inches, driveways could only be pressure washed on Thursdays, and Halloween decorations were allowed but had to be removed by November 2 at 10 a.m. sharp. Agnes's favorite activity was issuing violation notices, which she left tucked into mailboxes or taped conspicuously to front doors. The notices were always signed HOA Compliance Officer, a title Agnes had given herself. Ethan watched his neighbors scramble to comply with Agnes's whims, from repainting fences to replanting hedges, and couldn't help but feel sorry for them. Still, he figured he could fly under the radar if he kept his head down. That was until Agnes discovered the strip of land at the edge of his property, a discovery that would ignite a neighborhood war. Ethan thought he had found his dream home, peaceful, cozy, and far from nosy neighbors. But what he didn't know was that his property came with a small strip of land bordering the community park. This narrow path, which barely qualified as a dirt trail, had somehow become a shortcut for HOA residents. Agnes, of course, was the self-proclaimed guardian of the so-called shortcut. In her mind, it was practically a community lifeline. Ethan first noticed the issue one lazy Saturday morning when a jogger casually trotted across the strip. Then came the dog walkers, followed by cyclists. By the next weekend, it looked like rush hour on a highway. Ethan scratched his head, watching the parade of trespassers. "Is there a toll I'm not charging?" he muttered to himself. Still, being the easygoing guy he was, Ethan decided not to make a fuss. Maybe it's just a one-time thing, he thought. He couldn't have been more wrong. One fateful morning, Ethan decided to post a small sign that read, "Private property, please do not trespass." He figured a polite reminder would be enough to deter the traffic, but no sooner had the sign gone up than Agnes showed up on his doorstep, armed with her clipboard and an air of righteous indignation. "Ethan," she began with a tone that was equal parts condescension and menace, "we need to talk about that sign you've put up." "What about it?" Ethan asked, leaning against his doorframe with a bemused smile. Agnes thrust the clipboard forward like it was evidence in a courtroom. "This path has been used by the community for years. It's practically public property." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "It's on my deed." "Pretty sure that makes it private property." Agnes scoffed, her latte sloshing precariously in her hand. "Well, in this neighborhood, we value community access. That sign sends the wrong message." Ethan bit back a laugh. "Agnes, it's just a sign. You're acting like I built a moat." Her eyes lit up with a strange intensity. "Don't give me ideas," she snapped before storming off, her pink visor bobbing with each angry step. The next week, the situation escalated. The sign had only emboldened the trespassers. Now, instead of quietly using the strip, they strutted through it as if making a statement. Ethan even caught one jogger pausing to take a selfie in front of the private property sign, posting it with the caption, "Some people think they own the world. LOL." Things hit a boiling point when Ethan returned home one evening to find tire tracks gouged into the strip. It seemed someone had decided to drive through it like they were testing a monster truck. "That's it," Ethan muttered, surveying the damage, his easygoing nature finally reaching its breaking point. "If they won't respect the sign, I'll give them something they can't ignore." Ethan decided it was time for a fence. Nothing too fancy, just a simple barrier to mark his property line and end the nonsense. He called a contractor, ordered posts, and scheduled the installation. When the workers arrived, Agnes was lurking nearby, glaring at them like a hawk watching its prey. She marched over, clipboard in hand, her face a mask of fury, and declared, "This construction is unauthorized. You can't just build a fence without HOA approval." Ethan smiled sweetly, a hint of steel in his voice. "Agnes, the HOA doesn't own this land." "I do." Her eyes narrowed, and a vein throbbed in her temple. "You'll regret this," she hissed, stomping off in her neon-pink sneakers, a whirlwind of indignation. By the end of the week, the fence was up, complete with a sturdy gate and a fresh coat of paint. Ethan added a second sign for good measure, "No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted." Agnes's reaction: she stood outside the gate, arms crossed, muttering to herself like a villain plotting her next move, her latte forgotten on the nearby curb. Ethan watched from his porch, sipping coffee and thinking, let the games begin. The day after the fence went up, Ethan woke up to a sound that could only be described as a car alarm crossed with a banshee's wail. He stepped outside to find Agnes standing in front of the gate, honking her car horn like she was summoning the HOA cavalry. "Ethan!" she shouted, waving her clipboard like a white flag that wasn't actually white, her face contorted in rage. "This fence is a direct violation of HOA policy. Open this gate immediately." Ethan, still holding his coffee mug, leaned on the fence casually. "Agnes, it's 8 a.m. on a Saturday. What could possibly be this important?" Agnes marched up to the gate, her visor slightly askew from the effort of her rage, her voice trembling with fury. "This path is vital for the community. You're blocking access, and that's illegal." Ethan took a sip of his coffee, his calm demeanor infuriating her further. "It's not illegal if it's my property, Agnes. Do you even know what the word trespassing means? Don't get smart with me," she snapped, her voice reaching a fever pitch. "I'm on the HOA board. We'll see about this." Agnes wasn't about to let Ethan win. That afternoon, he found a bright yellow HOA violation notice taped to his fence, flapping ominously in the gentle breeze. The handwritten note claimed he owed a $500 fine for unauthorized construction. Ethan laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee, the absurdity of the situation striking him as darkly comical. "Nice try, Agnes," he muttered, taking the notice inside and tacking it onto his fridge like a trophy. Over the next few days, Agnes escalated her efforts. She rallied a small group of HOA loyalists who began spreading rumors about Ethan, painting him as an anti-community menace. She even tried to send landscapers to remove the fence under the pretense of community maintenance, but Ethan, forewarned by a sympathetic neighbor, was quick to shut that down, standing his ground with a polite but firm refusal. Each attempt only strengthened Ethan's resolve. "If Agnes wants a war, she picked the wrong guy," he said to himself as he installed security cameras around the property, a glint of determination in his eyes. Agnes's breaking point came when she realized Ethan wasn't backing down. One sunny afternoon, Ethan spotted her pacing outside the gate, her phone pressed to her ear, her brow furrowed in deep thought. Moments later, 2 police cars pulled up to Ethan's side yard, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the otherwise peaceful scene. Setting down his book, Ethan thought, "Here we go. The officers approached Ethan, looking slightly embarrassed, as if they dealt with neighborhood disputes all too often. "We got a call about a blocked public road," one of them said, his tone neutral. Ethan chuckled, gesturing to the fence. "This isn't a public road. It's private property, and I can prove it." He handed over his property deed and a copy of the township map, both clearly marking the strip as his land. The officers nodded, satisfied, their expressions shifting to understanding. Agnes, who had been hovering nearby, her face a thundercloud of indignation, interjected loudly, "But it's been used as a shortcut for years. That makes it public." The officer turned to her, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Ma'am, that's not how property rights work. This is private land, and he has every right to restrict access." Agnes's face turned beet red, her eyes blazing with fury. "This isn't over," she screeched before stomping back to her car, the slam of her door echoing her frustration. Ethan waved at her retreating figure with a smirk. "Have a great day, Agnes." News of the incident spread quickly through the neighborhood, becoming the subject of hushed conversations and knowing glances. Some neighbors supported Ethan, quietly thanking him for standing up to Agnes's tyranny. Others, still loyal to the HOA or simply afraid of Agnes's wrath, whispered that he was disrupting the harmony of the neighborhood. Ethan didn't care. His peace of mind was worth more than the gossip. He installed another camera for good measure, just in case Agnes decided on any more clandestine activities, and added a sarcastic sign to the gate, "Private property. Trespassers will be hugged by the dogs." Despite Agnes's tantrums and the neighborhood chatter, the fence stood firm, a testament to Ethan's unyielding stance, and he was just getting started. Agnes wasn't one to accept defeat quietly. Within days of her 911 call fiasco, Ethan received a formal letter inviting him to an HOA meeting. The subject, his unauthorized gate and obstruction of community access. Ethan rolled his eyes, a wry smile playing on his lips. "Of course, she's taking this to a kangaroo court," he muttered. The meeting was set for the following week, and Ethan, being the resourceful guy he was, came prepared. He brought a folder filled with evidence, property deeds, security footage including the jogger selfie, and even screenshots of Agnes's bogus violation notices. "If Agnes thinks she's got me cornered, she's in for a surprise," he said with a smirk, a plan forming in his mind. The HOA meeting was held in the community center, a beige room that perfectly matched Agnes's bland and controlling personality. As Ethan walked in, he noticed Agnes sitting at the head of a table, her clipboard clutched like a scepter of authority, her fluorescent pink visor casting a harsh glow on her determined face. The room was filled with HOA board members, a few nervous neighbors, and of course, Agnes's loyal minions, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. She wore a smug expression, as if victory was already hers, her latte sitting untouched beside her. The meeting began with the HOA president, a balding man named Bob who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, wearily introducing the issue. "Today, we're discussing the matter of Mr. Ethan's fence, which has caused some concerns regarding community access." Agnes immediately jumped in, her voice sharp and accusatory. "It's more than just a concern. He's disrupted the entire neighborhood. That strip has been a vital pathway for years, and now he has selfishly blocked it off." Ethan raised his hand calmly. "If I may?" The president sighed, a hint of resignation in his voice. "Go ahead, Ethan." Ethan stood calmly, placing his folder on the table with a decisive thud. "First, let me clarify something. This strip of land is not, and has never been, community property. It's private property. I own it. Here's the deed to prove it." He slid the document across the polished table, the rustle of the paper echoing in the tense silence. A few board members leaned in to inspect it, their eyebrows rising in surprise as they nodded in agreement. Agnes's smugness faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. "But it's been used as a shortcut for years. That makes it a community easement," she insisted, her voice losing some of its earlier confidence. Ethan smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. Actually, no. There's no easement recorded in any public documents, and just because people have trespassed doesn't make it their right. To drive his point home, Ethan pulled out his laptop and projected the security footage onto the large screen in the room, showing various neighbors, including Agnes herself, blatantly trespassing, walking, jogging, and even cycling across his property. The room erupted in murmurs as Agnes's face turned crimson, her composure finally cracking. Agnes, refusing to back down, tried one last-ditch argument, her voice laced with desperation. "This is about the community. We can't let one person disrupt everyone else's convenience." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Convenience doesn't trump property rights, Agnes. And for the record, your so-called community didn't seem too concerned when tire tracks tore up my yard." The board president, clearly tired of the drama and seeing the undeniable evidence, raised his hand firmly. "Enough, Agnes. We've seen the evidence, and it's clear this land is not HOA property. We have no authority here." Agnes slammed her hands on the table, her pink visor askew, her voice rising to a shriek. "You're all cowards. This isn't over." But the other board members weren't having it. One of them, an elderly woman named Eleanor, piped up, her voice surprisingly firm. "Agnes, maybe it's time we let this go. We're making fools of ourselves." The room fell silent, the tension thick in the air. Agnes looked around, her eyes wide with disbelief as she realized her allies were abandoning ship. The meeting concluded with the board formally acknowledging that Ethan's property was his alone and that the HOA had no jurisdiction over it. As Ethan gathered his things, a wave of relief washing over him, Agnes stormed out, muttering something about higher authorities under her breath. Ethan couldn't resist a parting shot, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "Good luck with that, Agnes." The room erupted in laughter, a collective release of tension, as Agnes made her dramatic exit. Ethan walked out feeling victorious, knowing he had outwitted her at every turn. Just when Ethan thought it was over, Agnes proved she wasn't one to give up easily. A week after the HOA meeting, he received another letter, this time from Agnes's personal lawyer, a fancy-looking envelope that screamed trouble. The letter threatened legal action, claiming Ethan's fence violated an unwritten community easement and demanding its removal. Ethan burst out laughing as he read the letter, the absurdity of it all hitting him. Unwritten easement? Is that a legal term, or did she just make it up during her morning yoga session? Not wanting to leave any loose ends, Ethan forwarded the letter to his own lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah. A day later, his lawyer called him back, sounding more amused than concerned. "Ethan, this is a textbook example of bluffing. She doesn't have a case. Relax and enjoy your coffee." Ethan smirked, a feeling of satisfaction washing over him. "Oh, I plan to." Agnes, undeterred by her lawyer's lack of results, took matters into her own hands literally. Late one night, Ethan's security cameras caught her sneaking onto his property with a pair of bolt cutters, her silhouette illuminated by the moonlight. The footage showed Agnes struggling with the lock on the gate, muttering angrily to herself, her pink visor askew in the darkness. After a few minutes of frantic snipping, the bolt cutters slipped, and she fell backward into a flower bed with a muffled oomph. Ethan couldn't believe what he was seeing, the sheer audacity of her actions leaving him speechless. He saved the footage, thinking, "This is gold." The next morning, Agnes acted as if nothing had happened, waving cheerfully at Ethan from her driveway, a forced smile plastered on her face. Ethan waved back, suppressing a grin, the knowledge of her nighttime escapade adding a layer of hilarity to the situation. Ethan decided it was time to expose Agnes's antics to a wider audience. He contacted a local news station that specialized in covering HOA disputes and property rights, hoping to shed some light on the ridiculousness of the situation. After hearing his story and seeing the security footage, the station eagerly agreed to do an interview. A few days later, a camera crew arrived at Ethan's house. He shared everything, the property deed, the security footage including the bolt cutter incident, and Agnes's over-the-top behavior, his voice filled with a mixture of frustration and amusement. "She's treated my private property like it's her personal shortcut," Ethan explained to the reporter, "and when I said no, she declared war." The segment aired that evening, complete with the hilarious footage of Agnes's failed bolt-cutter mission, set to comical music. The title, "When HOA Rules Go Too Far, One Homeowner's Fight for His Rights." The news story went viral, spreading like wildfire across social media, and Agnes's reputation took a nosedive. Neighbors who had once sided with her, or at least remained silent, began to distance themselves, mortified by her behavior. Some even knocked on Ethan's door to apologize for their earlier complicity, their faces etched with embarrassment. "I didn't realize how out of control she was," one neighbor admitted sheepishly, handing Ethan a peace offering of freshly baked cookies. Agnes, meanwhile, was furious, her face likely matching the color of her infamous visor. She tried to rally the HOA for support, but the board, still reeling from the disastrous meeting and now facing public scrutiny, wanted nothing to do with her. A week after the news aired, Ethan received a formal letter from the HOA. It was an apology, signed by the board president, acknowledging Agnes's overreach and confirming that no further action would be taken against Ethan or his fence. The letter also revealed that Agnes had been asked to step down from the HOA board, the board finally recognizing the damage she had inflicted on the community's image. "Her actions don't reflect the values of our community," the letter stated. Ethan couldn't help but laugh, a feeling of vindication washing over him. "Guess the HOA finally found its backbone," he said, tacking the letter onto his fridge alongside Agnes's fake violation notice, a testament to his victory. Agnes's dramatic downfall left the neighborhood buzzing for weeks, the story becoming local legend. The once overbearing queen of the HOA had become the butt of every joke, her attempt to control Ethan's private property and the viral news coverage having thoroughly tarnished her self-made reputation. Soon after the HOA meeting and the subsequent media storm, Agnes quietly put her house on the market, a for sale sign appearing on her meticulously manicured lawn one Monday morning. By Friday, she was gone, her departure as swift and decisive as her enforcement of petty rules. Neighbors exchanged knowing smiles, their lawns never looking greener without Agnes inspecting them for infractions. Ethan couldn't help but chuckle when he noticed her moving truck blocking the street, a direct violation of Agnes's favorite HOA rule. The irony was too delicious to ignore. With Agnes gone, a palpable sense of relief swept through the community. It wasn't just about the fence or the rules. It was about reclaiming peace from the chaos Agnes had created. Under new leadership, the HOA took a drastically different approach. The new president, a friendly man named Ed, focused on harmony over hostility. Rules became guidelines, violations turned into friendly reminders, and community events brought people together instead of dividing them. Ethan noticed neighbors becoming more relaxed, their shoulders no longer tense with the fear of Agnes's scrutiny. Driveways had mismatched cars, lawns were slightly overgrown, and porch decorations actually reflected personalities. The neighborhood was finally becoming what it should have been all along, a home, not a battleground. One day, Ethan received a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a small plaque engraved with the words, "The man who stood against Agnes." Attached was a note, "Thanks for showing us how to stand up for ourselves. We owe you more than cookies." Ethan placed the plaque on his mantel, shaking his head with a grin. "I didn't sign up to be the neighborhood hero," he muttered, a warm feeling spreading through his chest. Months later, as Ethan was pruning his garden, enjoying the peaceful afternoon, he noticed a car slowing near his gate. His stomach dropped momentarily, a fleeting thought of was Agnes back? Crossing his mind. But instead of stopping, the driver rolled down their window and waved, a wide smile on their face. "Nice fence," they shouted with a grin before driving off. Ethan laughed, realizing that the gate had become a symbol not just of his victory over Agnes, but of standing firm against overreach. Over time, the neighborhood fell into a comfortable rhythm, the fence remaining standing tall and proud, and Ethan became a quiet legend in the community. Whenever someone complained about rules or enforcement, a neighbor would chuckle and say, "At least it's not Agnes running the show." Ethan added one final touch to his property, a small, humorous sign that read, "For peace of mind, trespassers will be met with sarcasm." It became a neighborhood favorite, and even Ed admitted, "That's the kind of rule we can all get behind." Agnes's departure from the neighborhood was swift but not unnoticed. As her moving truck blocked the street, ironically violating her own HOA bylaws, Ethan watched from his porch with a steaming mug of coffee, a sense of closure washing over him. A neighbor walking by joked, "Think she left a note for herself about the truck?" Ethan laughed. If only. With Agnes gone, a profound sense of relief swept through the community. It wasn't just about the fence or the rules. It was about reclaiming peace from the chaos Agnes had created. Under new leadership, the HOA took a drastically different approach. The new president, Ed, focused on harmony over hostility. Rules became guidelines, violations turned into friendly reminders, and community events brought people together instead of dividing them. Ethan noticed neighbors becoming more relaxed. Driveways had mismatched cars, lawns were slightly overgrown, and porch decorations actually reflected personalities. The neighborhood was finally becoming what it should have been all along, a home, not a battleground. One day, Ethan received a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a small plaque engraved with the words, "The man who stood against Agnes." Attached was a note, "Thanks for showing us how to stand up for ourselves. We owe you more than cookies." Ethan placed the plaque on his mantel, shaking his head with a grin. "I didn't sign up to be the neighborhood hero," he muttered. Months later, as Ethan was pruning his garden, he noticed a car slowing near his gate. His stomach dropped momentarily. Was Agnes back? But instead of stopping, the driver rolled down their window and waved. "Nice fence," they shouted with a grin before driving off. Ethan laughed, realizing that the gate had become a symbol not just of his victory over Agnes, but of standing firm against overreach. Over time, the neighborhood fell into a comfortable rhythm. The fence remained standing tall and proud, and Ethan became a quiet legend in the community. Whenever someone complained about rules or enforcement, a neighbor would chuckle and say, "At least it's not Agnes running the show." Ethan added one final touch to his property, a small, humorous sign that read, "For peace of mind, trespassers will be met with sarcasm." It became a neighborhood favorite, and even Ed admitted, "That's the kind of rule we can all get behind." Valuable lesson: the story of Ethan and Agnes teaches us a valuable lesson about standing up for your rights and not being intimidated by those who abuse authority. It highlights the importance of knowing your boundaries and the potential for positive change when individuals challenge overreach, even in seemingly small community settings. Ethan's steadfastness not only protected his own property rights but also ultimately led to a more relaxed and harmonious environment for the entire neighborhood. What are your thoughts on this neighborhood saga? Have you ever dealt with an overzealous HOA member or a similar situation? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content.